Okay, good. This story is about Jonah and the monster. Have you ever heard about Jonah and the monster? No. Most people talk about Jonah and the whale, but
Yeah,
and sometimes, very few times, you hear somebody talk about Jonah and the worm. But this tonight, we're going to talk about Jonah and the monster. Now, maybe you haven't read that in your Bible, but you need to get out the book of Jonah and see if you can find a monster in there. Okay, well, before I get started on that Jonah story, I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about somebody that I know from my childhood. He was a blue and fuzzy monster named Grover. Have you ever met this guy, Grover? He's
yeah,
on Sesame Street, and Sesame Street is a children's program that when I was a kid, I would watch every afternoon, and it was so fun. They had Cookie Monster, and they had Bert and Ernie, and all different ones. And Grover, he was so fuzzy and cuddly and a real lover. He loved people, and there was one book about Grover called The Monster at the End of This Book. And Grover, if there's one thing that Grover was scared of, it was monsters. He did not like to hear the word monsters. He was frightened of them. And when he read that title, The Monster at the End of the Book, he said, "What did that say on the first page? What did it say? Did that say there will be a monster at the end of this book?" It did. Oh, I am so scared of monsters. That was a big trouble for him because he was definitely scared of monsters. He asked everyone, "Shh, be quiet. Listen, I have an idea. If you do not turn any pages, we will never get to the end of this book. And that is good because there is a monster at the end of this book." Well, do you know what I did as a child? I turned the page. Oh no, you turned the page. Well, why would Grover not want me to turn the page? Because that brought us one step closer to the end of the book. So Grover came up with an idea. He was going to tie the pages closed so that nobody could turn those pages. And this will stop you from turning the pages. See, I'm tying the pages together so that you cannot open them. But of course, what did I do? I broke those cords and I turned the page, and so did you, and oh no! And so Grover tried all different things. There was a whole page where he built a fortress out of wood, and I turned the page and it left him in a pile of sticks. He was frantic. We were getting closer and closer to the end of the book. And what was at the end of the book? Monster. And he did not want to meet that monster. And so he was working very frantically. And so he decided if he built a brick wall, that could stop me from turning the pages. But do you know, even as a little boy, I could turn the page. And it just left him in a pile of bricks. He said, "Do you know, you are very strong." And so there was Grover. Well, that was a long time ago when I was just a little boy, but I just kept pushing through those pages. And then we finally got to the very page right before the end of the book. The next page of this book, there is a monster at the end of this book, and I am so scared. Please do not turn the page. Please, please, please. And do you know what was there? We're going to find out. Turning the page Don't do it. Ah, there it was. It's the end of the book. And the only monster that was there was Grover. He said, it's me. I'm the one. I'm the blue, fuzzy, lovable monster that was at the end of this book. Oh, it's me, a lovable, furry Grover. I am the monster. And you were so scared. I told you, and I told you there was a monster, but you didn't believe me. And the book ended, and he said, oh, I am so embarrassed. Why was he embarrassed? Because it was him. He was the monster at the end of the book the whole time. Well, now let's dive into the story of Jonah. Jonah and the monster at the end of his own book. Remember that? Did you ever see that? Well, there's Jonah. He's just a young guy. The Lord had plans for Jonah and wanted him to do some things. And a voice came to Jonah one night. Maybe he was laying in bed. Jonah, Jonah, I need you. Jonah woke up. Oh, what? And the Lord said, Jonah. And Jonah said, yes, Lord, I'm ready to do whatever you want. Just tell me. And the Lord said, Jonah, I want you to go to Nineveh. No, Lord. There are monsters in Nineveh. Jonah was very scared of the Ninevites. You see, the Ninevites were very vicious people. They liked to kill people. In fact, they would take spears and poke them, and they would do all kinds of vicious things to them. And Jonah was not about to go there. He could imagine in his mind that if he traveled across the desert and got over there at the end of that story, it would be a terrible, terrible ending. He was sure there were monsters in Nineveh, and you know, he was right. The Assyrians. Yeah, what did I say this? The Assyrians, they were over in Nineveh. Well, God spoke to him very clearly. Jonah, I want you to go. And Jonah packed his suitcase. He got himself ready. Maybe he just had a duffel bag. And as he started to head out, he started to think to himself, I am going to Nineveh where they will kill me. And he said, no, I will go the other way. I will go the other way. And he started to run as fast as he could. Now, Nineveh was a big city. It was a beautiful city. If you can imagine, that city was so vast and it was filled with people, but those people were sinful people. They were violent people, and they were pagan worshipers. Jonah had heard about that city because it was very, very famous. It had big buildings, big temples. People worshipped idols. Sometimes they even killed little babies. Jonah wasn't going to go there. He said, I am going to go the other way. I don't want to be around those Assyrians at all. And so this is the map right here of where Jonah was supposed to go. You see that red arrow? That would have been the shortest route for Jonah to get over to Nineveh. It would have been a very tiring journey, and certainly he would have wanted to make sure his water bottle was full, because it was through some mountains and some desert, and it was going to be hot and long. But that's where God told him to go. Now, you see this black line starting there with Joppa. That's where Jonah decided to get on a boat. And he was going to go the opposite way of where God asked him to go. And so he got on the boat, and following that black line, you can see about where he got into a storm. And that black line begins to curl around. Now, the boat was supposed to follow this purple line clear over to Spain, and he was going to get off in Tarshish and just enjoy some orange juice and sit there on a beach and enjoy maybe learning some Spanish. I don't know what he was going to do over there, but he got into a storm, a terrible storm. And you know the story. I don't have to tell you. As he fled across to get on a boat, and in that boat, suddenly there was a terrible storm, lightning crashing, and Jonah was so happy because he was not headed to Nineveh. He was sure that if he went into Nineveh, there would be a monster at the end of his story. Now he's on a ship, and all the sailors are upstairs, and they are frightened. They've never seen a storm this bad. There's lightning crashing, and the waves are smashing, and the people are dashing around getting the water out of the boat, and their faces are wet, and their clothes are wet, and they're screaming, hollering, ah! And you know what, Jonah? Oh, that selfish Jonah. He's just down in the bottom of the boat, sleeping. Or at least he was pretending to be asleep. You can't sleep like that in a storm, but he was pretending to sleep because he really should have been up on the top deck, and he should have been helping bail the water. But no, not Jonah. No, he was pretending like, I'm just at peace down here. And really inside of his mind, he was thinking about all the frightful things and how he had escaped God, and he'd ran away, and he thought to himself, just throw me overboard. And that's exactly what they did. 1, 2, 3. You know, at the very moment that Jonah hit the water, peace, be still. It was calm, and Jonah went down, and then there was a giant fish. It just swallowed Jonah in one big bite. Gulp, and he was gone. Well, now Jonah had a lot of time to think. It was kind of like a quarantine, really. He was in that fish for 3 days and 3 nights. I don't know if he had a calendar, but he certainly didn't have a watch. But somehow he knew exactly how long it was in there. It had to smell bad. Oh man, there was seaweed wrapped around his head and pieces of fish that the big whale had eaten. And oh man, it was gooey and gushy down in there. And Jonah just started to pray. I mean, wouldn't you pray if you were in the middle of a fish, in the middle of the ocean? And Jonah started to pray. He said, oh, Lord, save me. Save me from the monster at the end of the story. Is this the one? Oh, Lord, I just need help. He started to pray, and you know, the Lord redirected that fish. You know, that fish could have swam to Tarshish. He could have swam to Italy. He could have gone up the Aegean. He could have gone over to Turkey. But, you know, that fish had a little bit of a navigation, just like a GPS. And it was God's navigational system. And that fish went right back to the beach, the closest place that Jonah could have been spit up. And he was spit up right on the shore. Blah. And Jonah, oh man, he was glad to be out of that fish. And he began to walk and think and walk and think. And he was mad. Oh man, he was mad. How come I have to do this? Why couldn't God give this job to somebody else? I don't want to be doing this job. This isn't fair. I want to be in control here. God, you could have asked somebody else. Now, this is an actual picture of Nineveh today. If you were to go there, you could actually see the walls of Nineveh 60 feet high. These people were powerful. They were smart, and they were really aggressive. And Jonah was walking across the desert to the Assyrian capital. It would be as if you were asked to go. Niles, are you out there? Can you imagine if God woke you up and said, Niles, I want you to go to Washington, D.C. and preach a message to Donald Trump? Could you imagine doing that? That's exactly what Jonah was asked to do? Well, he got inside that city and he decided, I will at least whisper the message to somebody. I don't want to do it. It's not my will, but I will do it. And so there he was sitting in a cafe drinking some tea. And they said, what are you doing here, you stranger, you foreigner? He said, God said he's going to destroy this city in 40 days. And that person in the cafe jumped up. Hey, everyone, did you hear that? God said he's going to turn this city into rubble in 40 days. Hey, everybody. And they started shouting throughout the streets. And before they knew it, they had a full-on revival in Nineveh. And they started to pull down the idols. And they started telling the truth and repenting and calling on the God of heaven. And Jonah couldn't believe it. He told people God was going to destroy the city, and now God's probably not going to carry out his will. Everybody's going to think he's a crazy man. And so Jonah started really getting into a bad mood. I mean a bad mood, because he was going to be so embarrassed. And so there was a tiny hill outside of Nineveh, and he decided he was just going to go sit on that hill where he didn't have to see anybody. Nobody could ask him any more questions. He'd been answering questions day after day about how this destruction was going to take place and what fire from heaven looks like and what is this God all about and is this God a kind God, compassionate God? And he was sick of it all. He didn't want to do any more of that. He just went and sat on a hill so he could have some time alone. That's what he really wanted, just time by himself. You know, it was such a good thing that there was a little vine there that grew up. And he thought, oh, this is so nice. It's a hot place out here, and I can just be under this vine where I at least get a little bit of shade. And he would lay down, and if he just positioned himself right, the leaves of that vine covered his face, and he was thankful for that. But you know the story. Is there a monster still ahead? Yes, there is, and every slide is getting closer to that monster. Is this the monster? No. But God called a worm, and just like he called that whale and sent the whale, God called the worm, and the worm came over and began to nibble, 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 nibble on that vine, and pretty soon, snip, the vine was broken, and that vine just withered up. And Jonah was mad. Oh, he was mad. He's like, Lord, how could you bring me out here? He says, don't you know that vine was my only protection from the sun? And now you sent a worm. Oh, God, I'm so mad. You know what God said? He said, Jonah, don't you remember that I have over 125,000 people in the city who don't even know their right hand from their left? He says, don't you have any compassion? Jonah, don't you have any concern for anyone besides yourself? And there's the monster. You see, Jonah found the monster at the end of the story. And the monster was a fish. It was a selfish. Jonah had a giant fish living inside of him. It was a fish that was all about, I want to do this, and I want to have it my way, and I want to do it on my own timetable. And that selfish lived right inside of Jonah. And as far as Jonah tried to run, and as fast as he tried to run, he couldn't outrun the selfish monster. And God presented it right in his face. What is selfish anyway? Take a look at this statement. We sometimes run into selfishness. Selfishness sounds like this. As long as everything is exactly as I want it and on my timetable, I'm totally flexible. You ever think like that? You know, we got to watch out for selfishness in our life because we all have selfishness in us. Selfishness is that which makes us want to do our way. It makes us want to stamp our feet and demand that we get what we want. You know, the Bible talks quite a lot about being kind to others and about being gentle and loving and giving others what they want. And really, that's being like Jesus, is showing others kindness and putting down that selfish in your life. Here's what the Bible says, Philippians 2:3, do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Maybe you could just read that out loud together as a family. You don't have to unmute yourself. Let's just start it together. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Well, God bless you, children. May you live lives that are lives of love, that honor and give others the honor. And may the Lord bless you, that you will never find a giant fish living in you. God bless. Thanks.